What's up, Acolyte Squad? My name is Prince and I'm an urban acolyte. In this video, I want to share my thoughts about the news that George Lucas had plans to make Darth Maul the villain of the Star Wars sequel trilogy.
You have been well trained, my young apprentice. They will be no match for you.
So I want to repeat that you heard me correctly. George Lucas had plans for Maul to be the big villain of the sequel saga, and it's been revealed in some interviews in a new book, Star Wars Archives 1999 to 2005. It's coming out in December in the US. It's already out in Europe. Now, before I get into the interview and share my thoughts, I just want to say that if you're new here, my channel is kind of like Black Belt Magazine for geek culture. It's like sipping tea and talking Star Wars and superheroes with a kung fu geek. That's me. So if you're into that sort of thing, hey, be sure to subscribe to get all of the videos. Now, about this Darth Maul thing, I initially saw this posted to Reddit, but I traced it back to some Star Wars forums where there's an ongoing discussion regarding this news about Maul in the sequel saga. Now, I'm going to paraphrase the post, but it basically goes like this. After the fall of the Empire and the deaths of Palpatine and Vader, there was a power vacuum. Now, Maul is still alive, and just like we saw in the Clone Wars and in the Solo movie, he creates a criminal organization. Now, recall that there was this huge vacuum in the underworld after Return of the Jedi because Leia killed Jabba the Hutt on Tatooine. That's in the canon story. Now, the First Order was able to use this to their advantage by helping the Nitko cartel fill that void that was left by the absence of the Hutts. Well, in Lucas's version, Maul's organization is who fills that void that's created after Jabba's demise, and Maul eventually becomes the godfather of the criminal underworld all across the galaxy. Now, at the same time, there's also an absence when it comes to Force users. Vader and Palpatine are both dead, and Luke Skywalker is the last Jedi. So as Luke is out trying to locate the 50 to 100 surviving Jedi and Force-sensitive children to build a new Jedi Order, and Leia's out there helping build the New Republic, Maul recruits an apprentice of his own who is Darth Talon. So this sets the stage for the sequel trilogy. Luke has to accept that it's going to take at least 20 years to grow a new generation of Jedi because his students are all children. Leia and the New Republic are dealing with wrestling control of New Republic territories from all of these gangsters. And in the shadows, you have Darth Maul and Darth Talon who are manipulating everything. Now, by the end of this trilogy, Luke would have successfully rebuilt the Jedi Order. Leia would have successfully rebuilt the New Republic and become Supreme Chancellor. And by restoring peace to the galaxy, Leia would actually have emerged as the actual chosen one by the end of the Skywalker saga. Now, I can't speak for anyone else, I can only speak for myself, but I actually felt like this was the direction that the sequel trilogy was heading in up until the rise of Skywalker. Now, I know there'll be people who disagree with me. I mean, I imagine that the response when this breaks from certain YouTube channels is gonna be how much better this story would have been than the sequel trilogy that we got. And look, I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole because I don't really deal with the whole woulda, shoulda, coulda stuff. Look, I try my best not to think that way because it's not at all productive and it's not in line with how I try to live my life. Also, it's not the Jedi way. The philosophy that I live by, which coincides with the Jedi way, is to train yourself to see things as they are. Accept what is and don't dwell on what's not or what you would like, because that's not fruitful and it's not at all healthy. It falls in line with a Sith type of philosophy, which is to focus in on what you want to happen while you overlook what actually is happening. So I'm not going to use this as a way to crap all over the sequel saga, because if you look back at some of my older videos, you'll see why I said certain things the way that I said them, like how I kept saying the Snoke wasn't that important. I kept saying that there was someone else in the shadows, and in a few videos, I showed you guys concept art of a Sith Lord with Darth Talon. Now, we didn't get that story with Maul because Well, Maul met his end on Tatooine in his final duel with Obi-Wan Kenobi on a Star Wars Rebels episode. That episode had some really meta stuff going on that I didn't talk about in my review back then, but hearing that Lucas considered making Maul the big bad for the final installment of the Skywalker saga, it makes me think that Filoni stepped in and said that character may have lost that desire to achieve those things in the absence of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And what is cool is that a lot of these ideas actually are playing out within the Filoni-verse. One of the other ideas Lucas mentioned was having planets controlled by Imperials who became warlords and got in bed with the gangsters following the collapse of the Empire. And if you can't see where this is going, I'm talking specifically about Moff Gideon in the Mandalorian series. Moff Gideon is an Imperial Warlord out in the Outer Rim territory where much of the events in Season 1 occur of The Mandalorian. Also, the Aftermath trilogy by Chuck Wendick also dealt with the idea of Imperial Warlords continuing to function after the collapse of the Empire. The truth is that a lot of the elements from this story, they did happen, and we're seeing them unfold right now in Star Wars. I also think this idea of gangsters and the criminal underworld being a threat to the Republic is something that is going to play out in the High Republic stories that are coming out next year. I'm also going to say that at some point there will probably be a Sith Lord who is pulling all of the strings there, and we might even see some other Force beings if the story ventures deep into the unknown regions like we were initially told. So before you start to believe the smoke and mirrors that some of the more popular Star Wars people who lack critical thinking skills are going to try to sell to the fandom, I want you to remember this. Look, Lucasfilm never buries ideas. They recycle everything. Whether you loved or you hated the sequel trilogy, it did one good thing. It got the creative folks at Lucasfilm to sit down and work on a big Star Wars project for 6 years. All of those ideas that we didn't see in the 3 movies to end the Skywalker saga are totally open to appear somewhere else. Another thing to think about, and I've said this multiple times, but George Lucas created Luke Skywalker as a way to put himself into the story. George retired and sold his company to Disney. As much as some people were disappointed and hurt by how Luke Skywalker was portrayed in the sequel saga, a lot of Star Wars fans weren't particularly kind to George Lucas following the prequels. So maybe the depressed and defeated Luke was a bit of a message about Lucas and the state of Lucasfilm in the final years before Disney purchased the company. Many of George's ideas actually did appear in the sequel trilogy, and you may not believe this, but Rian Johnson's installment, The Last Jedi, may have taken the most inspiration from what George wanted to do with his treatment. If we look at the bigger story, I think that Colin Trevorrow's installment really didn't fit in with the bigger narrative. And with the passing of Carrie Fisher, it basically made it impossible to arrive at this ending where Leia is revealed as the actual chosen one. Look, if we're being honest, I feel like Carrie's passing impacted the sequel trilogy more than any other creative decision, including all of the changes that J.J. Abrams made, because it sounds like there wasn't going to be a First Order at all, only Imperial Warlords who held small pockets of power, and there definitely was not going to be a Palpatine. But, I mean, at the same time, this was basically JJ's trilogy, and he laid the seeds for Palpatine's return from the very beginning when they started working on this. So look, I'm just gonna leave you guys with this thought. It would have been really cool to see Maul return and be the big bad guy in the sequel trilogy, and you were probably still gonna get Rey and Finn. They would have been Kira and Sam though. If John Boyega had been cast as Sam, I would like to think that he would have been treated better over the course of the films, along with the other people of color who appeared in them. I mean, if George Lucas had been involved, they definitely would have. But what happened is what happened, and we can't change the past. We can only focus on the present. Now, as great as this idea might sound, it's not the story that we're gonna get. Maul is dead. Talon could appear at some point. And personally, I would like to think that there are other Sith out there who never were part of the whole Rule of Two Bane order. That's a card that I'm keeping close to my chest because I'm not ready to reveal why I feel that way. But all of you who love Legends, I know that was a thing in Legends, that there were other Sith out there who were not part of the Darth Bane order rule of two Sith. But like I said, Lucasfilm finds ways to recycle and reuse ideas all the time. Maybe this idea of a Dark Lord of the Sith creating a new version of Maul's Crimson Dawn can be a thing to challenge the New Republic that's trying to rebuild itself after the events from the sequel trilogy. I mean, what happened with the Acolytes of the Beyond? Did they all find their way to Exegol and become part of the Sith Eternal? Or did they go from emo kids stealing Sith artifacts and tearing these cities up to some kind of criminal organization that we don't yet know about? See, what I've just said could totally set up this idea that Lucas had. Rey Skywalker is in this place where she has to find out if there are any surviving Jedi. Maybe Ahsoka, Cal Kestis, and Ezra Bridger have been hanging out with Baby Yoda somewhere out in the unknown regions or out in wild space. And Rey has to train Finn and a bunch of kids like Broom Boy. The New Republic is trying to rebuild itself, and you've got pirates and gangsters running loose all over the galaxy with no one to keep them in check. So with this situation, you can pick up the story in 20 years with an older Rey and Finn with their new generation of Jedi, and the story picks up with new heroes and a new story. And in the meantime, you use the Filoniverse to set all of this up. You use the small screen to introduce this new guy or gal, maybe it's Darth Talon or someone, I don't know. But you use the Disney Plus shows, the books, and the animated shows to build this person up with the hardcore fans so that now everyone wants to go to the movies and see them in a big story that pulls everything together. And that right there is how you take this idea that Lucas had and you use it to continue to tell Star Wars stories into the future. Because it's like this. If I write a story that people don't like, look, I can always start over fresh on a new page. And it's easy to sit here and dwell on the things someone doesn't like about the decisions folks at Lucasfilm made 2 years ago, 3 years ago. That's actually quite foolish because all of that stuff happened in the past and it's not what's happening right now. It's like my Sifu says, my present is your future. If you stay stuck in the past, you can never catch up. And personally, I'd prefer to focus on the present. Those other guys can stick to crying and complaining about the past, but I'm saying one day people are going to get tired of hearing it and want something fresh. And really, that's how I feel about all of these stories about what Lucas had intended, what the original plan was for this thing or that project that people didn't like. Look, hindsight is not actually 20/20. Hindsight is distorted by how we wish to see things, how we want to see things, but you can't move forward if you're always looking back. And I'd rather just be content with what's right here in front of me. So yeah, George Lucas wanted to connect the sequels to the prequels by having Maul be the villain of the final 3 movies. But that didn't happen. George changed his mind a lot. And well, that whole thing ended when Maul tried to take on Ezra as his apprentice, which resulted in his demise on Tatooine. Now, some people will tell you how this could have saved the saga, but the truth is, those people would have just found a new reason to complain about something they didn't like. Now, I'm not going to be part of that group. I'm just telling you what's in this new book and how I feel about it. So if you want to read this stuff for yourself, again, the book is called Star Wars Archive 1999 to 2005. You can pre-order it on Amazon right now and it should ship in December. I'll try to remember to post it to my Amazon store so you can click there to get your copy. It sounds like it's full of all kinds of other insightful articles about the Force and midi-chlorians and other ideas that George was working with during the prequels. Also, before I go, I just want to tell y'all to be on the lookout for my Mandalorian Season 2 review series. I'll be talking about the hero's journey as the story progresses and tracking the big 3 themes just like I did back in Season 1. The first review is already posted and I'm finishing up last week's episode right now. It was actually going to be the next video that I post, but I saw this story while I was actually editing that review video. Also, if you want to check out something that's actually relevant to the sequel trilogy, be sure to check out my discussion on Rey, Luke Skywalker, and the hero's journey of both characters. I really talk about how and why Rey had to pass Luke on her path to becoming a Jedi. It's a pretty deep lesson on all that Joseph Campbell stuff in Star Wars. But hey, that's all I got for this video, so thanks for watching. Y'all keep on breathing, and I'll see you on the next video.